All right, so I just want to go over some of the shortcuts that I put in here so when you watch some of my videos, you know where we are. I just pulled up one of the files I have here. Let me get rid of this. Oops, I'm in the wrong spot there. There we go. Okay. So ZBrush in its brilliance and wonder has some things that are all over the place, if you ask me. So I generally, most users generally come up with their own shortcut system. Some of them use click tabs like this and add stuff to that, or have a shortcut that pulls up a tab. For me, I just move some stuff around and just leave it that way. So I'm going to show you how to set up your own custom UI. I suggest, at least while you're watching my videos, because it's my methodology of doing stuff, that you set it up kind of like mine. You'll find that they're most of the common things that people use, but it's up to you if you want to change it or don't. But just remember, when I'm clicking on buttons that are here, they most likely won't be where they are in the vanilla ZBrush. So I'm just going to go through some of this stuff. So the first thing you need to do is realize that we have these two tabs over here. So I'm going to open this up, and by default we get brush and plugins. I think that's default. I'm pretty sure that's not just my default, but if it is, then I'll show you how to add more. Some of the other things that I always add over here is just for tabs. First is I go to and I add stroke. And all you have to do is add, is you click it and drag it over. If I click just that dot, and let me see if there's another one I do. Texture. Usually I put texture over here. If you just click this dot, it's going to go where it defaults to go. Sometimes it'll be over here, like stroke will come over here, and sometimes it'll go over here. But if you click and drag, it usually is pretty good. Stroke, by the way, is a jerk sometimes. Even when you drag it over here, it tries to go over there because it's not perfect. So just, if it goes over here, just drag it back and it'll be fine. That's the first thing I do, is I set up my tabs or my menus that I can hide if I really want to over here. And then what you want to do when you make changes to ZBrush is you want to set it up to default to make sure it keeps your changes. So for this case, I'm going to move preferences over here just so I have it not having to drop down. ZBrush is one of those programs that if you miss by a little bit or if you roll off too much, it just disappears. So I like to put my menus over here, at least when I'm working on them. So once I have this set, even these menus set up, I'm going to say store configuration, like that. And then I'm going to say save UI. Now, I don't have to do this every time I make every change, but I do want to make sure I do this before I restart. So I used to do this almost every time I made a major change, like putting these menus over here, because ZBrush crashed a lot more back in the day, but it's not so bad now, so you can probably wait. So, and then when you save it, save your interface someplace that you can find it and bring it with you. So I'm going to say Melon setup 2020. There's another 0. Okay. And I'm going to save it for now to the desktop, because right now that's where it's going to stay. So I'll just save it right there. Probably want to save it someplace really good. If you want to save it in the file you're working on, just remember that you're going to want to bring that configure file with you to school, and then you can just load it just by coming over to load UI and you can pop it in. Okay, so that's the first step, just getting these simple menus over. This is the first thing I did when I first started working. The next thing you want to do, for me, is get rid of some of the redundant stuff that we see on the side over here. I don't need zoom, I don't need scroll, I don't need this, I don't need move, scale, and rotate because of the same shortcuts as every other program. And now ZBrush has one unified gizmo for all the settings, so you don't even need to have 3, even if you did want to keep 1 up here. Okay, and then I want to look at this and say I probably don't need the move because that's my alt middle mouse or alt right mouse button. I don't want rotate because that's right here. I don't want other things like that. I probably want to keep this here, even though there's a shortcut for it. I'll probably keep this here. Some of these things I'll stay. So let's just go through and start cutting. And how do we add and subtract menu options from our interface? Really, really easy in ZBrush. In fact, so easy that a lot of times what I'll do is I'll turn on this Enable Custom button, and then I'll move this Enable Custom button up to my main UI so I can add and subtract things as I see fit. So let's just do one first. So to get rid of anything or to move anything in ZBrush, all you have to do is have that button on and push Control and Alt and then click on something and drag it, and it'll move it to where it needs to go. So that's one thing. So I'm going to move this back to where it is, and let's talk about the tools up here I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to get rid of homepage because I don't need to see their website every time it loads up. So I'll just get rid of something, instead of just dragging it where you want to go, drag it to the center of the screen, and then it's gone. So now I have that open space. This right here is just so you can customize. Eventually it'll go back. If I turn off this, you'll see it'll snap back to the top. So I try not to keep anything here or here because I want to keep it back to its tightest position it was. The other thing that I don't need, like I talked about, is this move, this rotate, and this scale. This other stuff all I think is very useful, and I usually keep it up in here. So I'm going to move this over so it's lined up to here, and make sure you get it lined up right, because if you go a little higher or a little low, it's going to be different. It's going to, well, it drives me bonkers. I'm going to leave light boolean, and I'm going to leave light box. Even though they all have shortcuts, I'm just going to go ahead and leave some of the mainstay ones that are up here. And the next thing I'm going to do is, this is a problem for me. The position of this is, this goes away. So I can't see it unless I close one of these menus. So rather than deal with that, because I keep them open a lot, is I just drag them over like this. Okay, so now I have my active points and everything listed here. Now the problem is this eats up a little bit more space than I wanted here, so I got to go through the grueling task of moving everything over to here. And I have to do them one at a time. There's no grab a bunch of them, unfortunately. And so I grab them all, and I'll speed through this. Okay, and so I've moved them all over. What I'll do is I'll turn off Enable Customize real quick, see if everything lines up pretty good. I think I'm a little off, but that's fine. Then I'll double click this over and make sure that it all looks good, and more likely, I want to make sure everything's here. I'm not sure if I like this, well, I guess it's always been that close. It's just a little over. This is actually something I'm doing for the first time. So anyway, so what I'm going to do now is these are all set up. Now I can see this. Now I have this space above here, which you'll see for the project that we're working on next, that I like to have this part open for brushes. I don't need, like I said before, I don't need Zoom 3D, because that's this, the shortcuts for this we've talked about. So I'm going to get rid of that one. Oops, that's right, I got to turn my enable back on. And now you can see why I usually have the enable button in here somewhere. I don't need to turn this back on. Here we go. And then I'll push rotate, Zoom 3D, this. Frame is the F button, so if you push F, it'll frame the model you want. You don't need that right there. Rotate on Z-axis and Y-axis. I don't even use that. Press one. I haven't used this. Is a new tool. Some of these are newer. Symmetry, local symmetry. I don't need the shortcut for that, and I'll show you how to set up the specifics of it, but I don't need the shortcut. So floor, I like to keep up, though there's a shortcut for it, but that's fine. I don't need every space alive. I'm going to keep line. I'm going to keep transparent. I'm going to keep ghost transparency. Solo is a big one. I don't usually use this, so but I'll leave it open because it's usable. This right here is actually not talking about the zooming in and out, even though it has a magnifying. It's talking about the canvas. Anyway, I don't use these very often. And when I do, if I have to use them, I can come up to, this is in documents, so they're all right here. They're all in other places, in my point. And if you want to bring them back, you can just do the same thing. After you take them off and you say, I hate them, you just need to find where they were and bring them back, and you can get it back. This is fine, I leave up. This is fine, I leave up. And then I just move this stuff up so I get all the space below it. And I use all the space below it for something coming up, and I'll explain it to you in a second. But I'm going to move all these up just so I get rid of the noise. I mean, we've got enough noise inside of ZBrush and new tools and stuff, so. And it doesn't want to snap over there, so I'll move those up. Okay. The next thing I usually do is say merge down. So whenever I have multiple meshes, if I look at, let me minimize this real quick. If I get rid of my area up here, you can see that I have 3 meshes here. If I want to add these pieces together, the way you generally have to do it is you have to come to the subtool and do something inside of here. But usually I'm in geometry most of the time. And if I can get coming into the subtool menu off my plate, I'm better. So for example, I'll come in here and say merge down, and I'll hold Control Alt and drag it over to here. And then I will say delete hidden, which is, delete hidden is not with the delete all or the delete other. It's with the geometry, in geometry, and inside geometry, it's inside modify topology, and then right there is delete hidden. So I like that one. I'm going to put it over here. Mirror and weld is another big one that I use. So, but I also like to have mirror by itself, and I'll explain that in a different video when we're actually using it. But to get to that one, I have to go to deformation and then click and drag it over. And this is what I mean about the menus in ZBrush being all over the place. Doesn't seem to be rhyme or reason. I'm sure they were when they made them, but for me, not so much. So another one that I really like is inside of brush, and it's under auto masking, and it's back face mask. Sometimes when you're sculpting, it'll go all the way through, and this will turn that back off. The other one is one that it's not in the menu by default, so you have to come up to transform. When I do X, it turns on the symmetries we've talked about before, but what if I don't want it to go in the X value, and what if I want to go in Y or Z? I have to come up to transform tool, find it, and change it. So what I usually do is put them, I think I put them here. And what you see how if I just leave it over here, it's much easier to get to. And then here, and then here, and then I put that there. Okay, so the next thing that I usually do is I do split, and one of the modifiers is, if I hide this transform now for now, there we go. And I say back to subtool again, and I come up to split. The problem with this one is it's a long button, and these are all short. So you got to kind of decide how to put these best in here. And I've looked before, and I haven't looked in 2020, but there's really not a way to change that. So I put that down here, which sometimes makes me want to put this one down here too. So for now, I'm going to do that so they're in the same kind of area. Let me move this. If they match there, how you suck, they're like off a little bit. I'm going to put it up. Okay. And then another one that I like to do is inside of a tool, inside of here, stroke, inside of stroke, and I leave this one as a menu over here because there's a lot of other stuff to do in here. So what I like to do is take this lazy radius and drag it down, I think here. Actually, I may be able to put that here. And then you may or may not see new ones down here from time to time, and hopefully in the video when I go over what I'm using it for, I'll tell you why I put them in there. Let's go back into preferences and turn off the enable customize. Just because I like to do this in the middle of it, save UI again, because you have to do both. So I'm going to save UI in the same over the old one, and then I'm going to say store UI. Anyway, let's get on with the last thing. The last thing I want to show you is what I like to have is over here, I like to have materials that I can just jump to. So I don't have to come up to here, and I don't have to find the one I want. So what I usually do is I just move a few of those standard materials over here so I can just jump between them real quick. So how do I do that? Let me turn on enable. And the thing is, I don't want to use this big icon. I want to use the small icon because look how much room I have over here, and I don't want to use it all. So I'll come into, in this case, I'll open up material, and I'll just click it, and it'll jump over here. And you can see now I've got small versions of the same thing. So I often use this one. You don't want to grab the big one here either because it's the same thing. So I'm going to say I often have skin shade, so I'll throw it over here. I usually have matte cap gray. I don't mind having the red over here too. Sometimes I get a good idea of the sculpt. And then what I'll do is I'll change it to this one. And then the basic material I'll throw over here just in case too. One more that I have that's not showing up here is I have to do it like this and find it. You'll have to go in here, find the ones you want, like this. And I do flat color. So I will say material, flat color, and drag it over here. I'm not sure why it's, just let me do it this way. Yeah, I'm gonna take this one and throw it over here. And then I will take this one and drag it to the middle. Another thing you'll notice is that whatever the stand, if I take this one, it's going to put whatever is active over on this one. So, like that's good enough. And then I might want to make sure they're all lined up the way I like. I mean, let's see if I can get it. No, let's see if I can get much closer. Okay, so I have those. So now that we have these all set up, we just need to make sure we turn off the enable customize. Again, if you want to put that somewhere so you can do it, that's fine. And then you want to say save UI. And then you want to store it. And that's it. And that's the, it'll be homework. Part of the homework tonight is to set up your UI and some screen capture of what you have.